Topic Introduction. Today we are taking a brief look at all 8 angler-like monsters in Urban Shade Hadal Division's Pressure. If you don't know what Pressure is, then go play it. It's a really good game that deserves all the attention it gets, and it provides context for this video. Now for those who have played the game or really like it, but can't play it, let's look at the angler-likes. First, let's define angler-likes, because it's a term I made up due to all 8 of these monsters obviously being related, despite not having a common term. Some may call these node monsters, but some wikis disagree. Some call them all anglers, despite 3 of them not technically being anglers. So for clarification, the 8 monsters we're talking about are the Angler, Frogger, Pinky, Blitz, Chainsmoker, Pandemonium, Mirage, and the Harbinger. Before we actually get into the breakdown of each of these monsters, we need to discuss 2 mechanics that will come up and therefore need to be understood. The first of these is anxiety. The anxiety meter measures your anxiety. The anxiety meter will be empty for a majority of your run, but goes up when you are hiding in a locker. If you hide in a locker for more than a few seconds, you will hear a heartbeat sound that will progressively get faster as time goes on. Once the heartbeat sound reaches a frequency where the sound can no longer play in its entirety, you will be kicked out of the locker and the sound's frequency will decrease. Once the heartbeat sound speed gets slow enough, it will stop. Once the sound stops, you can re-enter the locker and hide once more. The second mechanic we need to cover is deaf mode. Deaf mode adds visual indicators to visualize sounds to help the auditorily impaired of us, but it can be useful to avoid angler-likes who emit sounds. The visual indicators for angler-likes are colored vignettes around the corners and sides of the screen. The color of the vignette indicates what angler-like it is, whilst the opacity of the color and size of the vignette indicates the intensity of the sound. With both of these mechanics understood, we can dissect these angler-likes and their mechanics. Angler. The angler is the most common entity in the game, as well as being the base for the other monsters. The angler or one of its variants will spawn around one every 10 to 15 rooms, due to them utilizing a timer to decide their spawn. The angler will announce its arrival by flickering the lights and then spawning soon after. Once the angler spawns, any players using deaf mode will see a gray vignette begin to form around their screen, while those who can hear will hear a medium-pitched scream slowly increasing in intensity. As the angler approaches, you can hear lights breaking and turning off, or possibly see the angler itself. The angler will then enter the room and follow a path of nodes going from the most direct route from the entrance of the room to the exit. If there are 2 equally long paths, the angler will most commonly take the path most to the right of it, although it may on occasion go left instead. The angler will turn off lights in its hitbox as it goes through the room, although squiddles may spawn anywhere in the room. The angler's hitbox is roughly as big as most hallways in the game, which makes it easy to estimate. Any offshoot rooms with opaque walls, vent segments that aren't visible from the rooms, and far corners of medium-sized or large rooms should be safe from the normal angler. Sometimes the angler will approach from rooms in front of the player and will arrive at the player's location quicker than normal. Using both headphones or other directional audio sources to figure out what direction the angler will approach from is heavily recommended. The best way to avoid the angler is to hide in a locker, although if that is not an option, it is recommended to stay out of line of sight and hitbox. Once the angler passes, the rooms it passes through will be dark and likely contain squiddles. Frogger. Our next angler-like is Frogger. Frogger is a variant of the angler and works off the same timer. Frogger is very similar to the angler in most aspects, so I'll only mention the differences. In deaf mode, Frogger's vignette is a yellow-orange color. Frogger's scream is lower pitched and sounds more like breathing or wind. Although by far the biggest difference between the normal angler and Frogger is that Frogger goes through the room the player is in 3 times. He goes through from entrance to exit, then quickly turns around and goes back from exit to entrance. At this point, it is recommended that if you are hiding in a locker, that you leave it to reset your anxiety. Within between 3 and 30 seconds later, Frogger will go through the room again and kill anyone in his way. After this, he will not return. Frogger cannot come from in front of the player, only the normal angler can. Pinky. Next up is Pinky. Pinky is also a variant of the angler, so therefore runs off the same timer. Pinky is best known for being the cause of much anxiety for the player, as she doesn't flicker the lights. Pinky will spawn and begin emitting a high-pitched scream that is much louder to compensate for the lack of visual cues. In deaf mode, her vignette is predictably pink. She will not turn off the lights as she passes through the room, but will still definitely knock out your lights if you aren't hidden. The best counters to Pinky are turning up the volume, turning on deaf mode due to any ambient sounds sounding similar to Pinky's scream, and bringing buddies to confirm any suspicions. If you haven't seen an angler in around 15 rooms, I would start listening out for an oncoming screaming fish. Pinky becomes a big problem when in underwater rooms because the water muffles any sound, including Pinky's scream. Pinky also cannot come from in front of the player. Blitz. On to number 4, Blitz. Blitz is predictably quick, very quick. He moves significantly faster than his counterparts, but does have compensation. Blitz flickers the lights twice instead of once, like most anglers. Once the lights flicker twice, I would advise hiding as soon as possible. Due to Blitz's speed, your anxiety won't kick you out of the locker before his arrival. If you hear a scream prior to hopping in a locker, better luck next time. Blitz's deaf mode color is a light blue, despite his actual model being more grayish in color. Blitz's scream is higher in pitch than the normal angler, but not as high as Pinky. Blitz cannot come from in front of the player. Chain Smoker. Now for the final angler variant, Chain Smoker. Chain Smoker is the slowest of the anglers, but don't think he's not a threat. Chain Smoker doesn't scream nearly as loud as the other anglers, and has the lowest pitch of all of them. He instead emits the sound of dragging chains, which is what presumably makes him so slow. He emits a green smoke both around and behind him, but it's not just there for looks. The smoke is that of Paranoia's box, another entity in the game, which makes people's fears intensify. Claustrophobia is one of these fears, which is anxiety around being trapped. This means that when Chainsmoker's around, your anxiety meter fills up significantly quicker. Because of his slow speed, if you hide in a locker, you will be in his hitbox for longer than other anglers. If you jump out of the locker due to anxiety while you're in Chainsmoker's larger than average hitbox, you will be killed. That is what makes him a threat. If you don't get in the locker at the last second, it'll be your last second. Chainsmoker's death mode color is green, like his smoke. Chainsmoker moves faster than the player despite moving slower than other anglers. Chainsmoker cannot come from in front of the player. Pandemonium. Moving on from the angler variants, we have Pandemonium. Pandemonium doesn't work off the angler timer, but a separate, much longer timer. Pandemonium flickers the lights like the anglers, but doesn't scream. Pandemonium instead emits the sound of clinking metal and loud mechanical sounds. His vignette is blood red and has a different shape from the angler's. Pandemonium moves slower than the angler, but faster than Chainsmoker. Upon spotting the player, Pandemonium will scream. Pandemonium cannot be avoided by hiding in far corners of the room. If you can see him, he can see you. If he sees you, he will scream and path towards you much faster than you can run. The only way to fully avoid him is to hide out of sight, like in an offshoot room or vent. If you hide in a locker that Pandemonium can see, he will begin attacking the locker. You will have to play a minigame to survive his attack. The D rank badge is obtained by surviving Pandemonium without doing his minigame. Pandemonium cannot come from in front of the player. Mirage. Mirage will flicker the lights like a normal angler. Mirage is very rare and is heavily unlikely to spawn, yet is still significantly more likely to appear compared to the harbinger. Mirage's appearance is light blue, very transparent mist cloud. The sound emitted by Mirage is that of an underwater angler. The death mode vignette is non-existent despite Mirage making a sound. Mirage has no document and cannot kill the player. It follows the same path as an angler would through the room. Mirage cannot approach from in front of the player, or at least there is no reported cases of him doing so. The Harbinger. Finally, the Harbinger. The Harbinger is by far the rarest of the angler lights. As of writing this, I've only encountered the Harbinger once, and it took hours of grinding to find him. The Harbinger is only available in Endless and has no document. It is not canon to the game, and there is no way to survive him. His death mode vignette doesn't exist because he's silent. You can tell he's approaching when the lights turn red and all the lockers, doors, and cabinets begin rapidly opening and closing. If you hide in a locker, the Harbinger will activate an impossible minigame similar to Pandemonium's. You cannot escape him. Sebastian will give you a free revive upon death because it is physically impossible to survive the Harbinger. I have no hints for survival. If you find him, my friend, you are sincerely screwed. Conclusion. This is all of the angler likes that I know of as of writing this script. They are simple to avoid and shouldn't be much trouble for most experienced players. For the anglers, just get away from them or hide in a locker. For Pandemonium, don't let him see you or prepare for a minigame. For the Harbinger, say hello to Sebastian for me.